I normally don't put politics or talk about politics on my channel. I don't know, for some reason people are interested in what I believe in. I'm not gonna talk about my beliefs and side I am, but I did want to make a short video, a quick video about what is going on with the debate, and you will get my input on it. Let me know what you guys think, because this is... It's been one interesting debate, and of course I believe that one side did not get the fair amount of time that he should have gotten to speak, and he kept getting interrupted by the other side. But you guys will see what I'm talking about, and enjoy Sleepy Joe's stutter. Oh my God, you guys, this is so good. It's funny.
Saying the public health experts, quote, will be muzzled, will be suppressed. Given the fact that polls already show that people are concerned about the vaccine and are reluctant to take it, are you and your running mate, Senator Harris, contributing to that fear?
No more than the question you just asked him. You pointed out. He puts pressure and disagrees with his own scientists.
But you're saying you can't, Senator Harris is saying you can't trust the scientists.
No, you can trust the scientists. You believe for a moment what he's telling you in light of all the way lies he's told you about the whole issue relating to COVID. He still hasn't even acknowledged that he knew this was happening, knew how dangerous it was going to be back in February, and he didn't even tell you. He's on record as saying it. He panicked, or he just looked at the stock market. One of the two, because guess what? A lot of people died. And a lot more are going to die.
A lot of people died.
A lot quicker,
Mr. President?
You get shot and they died of the ass virus.
So you said you went to Delaware State, but you forgot the name of your college. Delaware State. You graduated either the lowest or almost the lowest in your class. Don't ever use the word smart with me. Don't ever because you know what? There's nothing smart about you, Joe. 47 years you've done nothing.
Let's have this debate.
And if you would have had, let me just tell you something, Joe.
I hope you guys can hear this.
The charge of what I was put through. I had to close the greatest economy in the history of our country. And by the way, now it's being built again.
See, it's going up to the economy in the next segment, sir.
Okay. It's going up fast.
Okay. When it comes to how the virus has been handled so far, the two of you have taken very different approaches, and this is going to affect how the virus is handled going forward by whichever of you ends up becoming the next president. I want to quickly go through several of those. Reopenings. Vice President Biden, you have been much more reluctant than President Trump about reopening the economy and schools. Why, sir?
Because he doesn't have a plan.
Because you're chicken line shit.
What the plan is. You've got to provide these businesses the ability to have the money to be able to reopen with the PPE as well as with the sanitation they need. You have to provide them. Shush for a minute.
Tell it to Nancy Pelosi
and
Schumer.
By the way,
Chuck.
Nancy Pelosi and Schumer, they have a plan. He won't even meet with them. The Republicans won't meet with the Senate. And he sits in his golf course. And, well, I mean, literally, think about it.
Oh, are you jealous because you can golf and you can't?
What about this question of
senile, delusional bitch.
He wants to shut down this country. And I want to keep it open. And we did a great thing by shutting it down. Wait a minute, Joe. Let me shut you down for a second, Joe.
Let me shake you down, Joe. Shake him down.
We just went through it. We had to because we didn't know anything about the disease. Now we found that elderly people with heart problems. We've learned a lot. But he wants to shut it down. More people will be hurt by continuing. If you look at Pennsylvania, if you look at certain states that have been shut down, they have Democrat governors all. One of the reasons they're shut down is because they want to keep it shut down until after the election on November 3rd. Because it's a political. But those states are not doing well that are shut down.
See, it's bullshit. Every time Trump opens his mouth, this bitch shuts him up.
Increasingly question the effectiveness of masks as a disease preventer. And in fact, recently you have cited the issue of waiters touching their masks and touching plates. Are you questioning
I think
the
masks are okay. You have to understand, if you look, I mean, I have a mask right here. I put a mask on, when I think I need it. Tonight, as an example, everybody's had a test, and you've had social distancing and all of the things that you have to, but I wear masks when needed. When needed, I wear masks.
Okay, let me ask.
I don't wear masks like him. Every time you see him, he's got a mask. He could be speaking 200 feet away from it. He shows up with the biggest mask I've ever seen. I will say this.
Vice President Biden, go ahead, sir.
Look, the way to open businesses is give them the wherewithal to be able to open.
This is not a fair debate.
But I was asking you, sir, about
because they
masks.
keep shutting Trump
masks
up.
make a big difference. His own head of the CDC said if we just wore masks between now, if everybody wore masks and social distance between now and January, we'd probably save up to 100,000 lives. It matters.
And they've also said the opposite. They've also said
he has an
no
earpiece.
serious person said the opposite.
Biden has an earpiece on the right ear. I just saw it.
Dr. Fauci said the opposite.
He did not say the opposite.
That's not allowed.
Masks are not good. Then he changed his mind. He said masks good. I'm okay with masks.
I
I'm
want to
not
ask you
fighting
both about
masks.
one last subject, because your different approaches has even affected the way that you have campaigned. President Trump, you're holding large rallies with crowds packed together, thousands of people.
Outside.
Outside, yes, sir, agreed. Vice President Biden, you are holding much smaller events with
Nobody will show up.
people.
Nobody shows up.
Even that guy started laughing. You see that?
Why are
Nobody
you
would
holding
show
big
up for
rallies? Why do you
Biden.
not?
That's the
You
truth,
go
though.
first, sir.
Because people want
We've all
to hear
seen
what I
it.
have to say. I mean,
But are you not
I've done
worried
a great
about it
job as a
spreading disease?
president, and I'll have 35,000 people show up at airports. We use airports.
Are you
for
not
hangars,
worried
and
about
we
the
have a
disease
lot of
issue,
people.
sir?
We do them outside. We have tremendous crowds, as you see. I mean, and literally on 24 hours notice. And Joe does the circles and has 3 people someplace.
Okay.
By the way, did you see
That's-
one of the last rallies he had?
I love this.
And a reporter came up to him to ask him a question. He said, no, stand back. Put on your mask. Put on a mask. Have you been tested? I'm way far away from those other people. That's what he said. I can't. I'm going to be okay. He's not worried about you. He's not worried about the people out there breathing on one another.
We've had no negative
cheek to
effect.
jowl. No negative effect.
We've had no negative effect. And we've had 35, 40,000
All right,
people
you wanna-
at these rallies.
Just
Yes.
quickly finish up, because I want to move on to our next.
Yes, I would. He's been totally irresponsible the way in which he has handled
President Trump, you say we are in a V-shaped recovery. Vice President Biden, you say it's more of a K-shape. What difference does that mean
K-shape?
to the American people?
He will destroy this country. You know, a lot of people, between drugs and alcohol and depression, when you start shutting it down, you take a look at what's happening in some of your Democrat-run states where they have these tough shutdowns. And I'm telling you, it's because they don't want to open it. One of them came out last week, you saw that. Oh, we're going to open up on November 9th. Why November 9th? Because it's after the election. They think they're hurting us by keeping them closed. But they got to open these states up. When you look at North Carolina, when you look, and these governors are under siege, Pennsylvania, Michigan, and a couple of others, you got to open these states up. It's not fair. You're talking about almost, it's like being in prison. And you look at what's going on with divorce, look at what's going on with alcoholism and drugs. It's a very, very sad thing. And he'll close down the whole country. This guy will close down the whole country and destroy our country. Our country is coming back incredibly well, setting records as it does it. We don't need somebody to come in and say, let's shut it down.
The idea that he is insisting that we go forward and open when you have almost half the states in America with a significant increase in COVID deaths and COVID.
Oh, shut the fuck up.
And he wants to open it up.
Significant
Why does he
increase
want to
my
open it up?
ass.
Why doesn't he take care of the American? You can't fix the economy until you fix the COVID crisis. And he has
You
no
can't even
intention of
talk.
doing anything about making it better for you all at home in terms of your health and your safety. Schools. Why are schools open? Because it costs a lot of money to open them safely. You know, they were going to give, his administration was going to give the teachers and school students masks. Then they decided, no, couldn't do that because it's not
Did
a
he say
national
max or
emergency.
mask?
It's not a national emergency. They've done nothing to help small businesses. Nothing. They're closing. 1 in 6 is now gone. He ought to get on the job and take care of the needs of the American people so we can open safely.
All right, your time is up, sir. We're going to get to...
I have to respond to that.
Well, you both had 2 minutes, sir.
Excuse me, he made a statement.
So did you.
People want their schools, people want their schools open. They don't want to be shut down.
You see that?
They don't want
He was
their homes
skipping
shut
Trump.
down. They want their restaurants. I look at New York, it's so
Motherfucker.
sad what's happening in New York. It's
That's
almost like
that's
a
the
ghost
Democratic
town. And I'm
cheaters
not
right
joking,
there.
But they want their schools open.
Okay.
I'm the one that brought back football. By the way, I brought back Big Ten football. It was me, and I'm very happy to do it. And
All right,
people of Ohio are very proud of me. And you know how I found out? When he took the
Gentlemen,
phony
we're going to
ad.
get to your economic plans going forward in a moment. But first, Mr. President, as you well know, there's a new report that in 2016, the year you were elected president, and 2017, your first year as president, that you paid $750 a year in federal income tax each of those years. I know that you pay a lot of other taxes, but I'm asking you the specific question. Is it true that you pay $750 in federal income taxes each of those 2 years?
I paid millions of dollars in taxes, millions of dollars of income tax. And let me just tell you, there was a story in one of the papers. I paid $38 million 1 year. I paid $27 million.
Show us your tax
returns. I went.
Fuck you.
You'll see it as soon as it's
Show us your tax. Show us your tax returns,
bitch. Go to the
bitch.
Board of Elections. There's a 118-page or so report that says everything I have, every bank I have, I'm totally under leveraged because the assets are extremely good, and we have a very, I built a great
I'm asking you a specific question, which is.
Let me tell you.
I understand.
I swear Biden was getting on my last
nerve. No, Mr.
He just talks out of his ass.
I'm asking you a question. Will you tell us how much you paid in federal income taxes?
That's none of your business.
In 2016 and 2017.
Millions of dollars.
You paid millions of dollars?
Millions of dollars.
So
yes.
not 750.
Millions of dollars, and you'll get to see it. And you'll get to see it. But let me just tell you, Chris, let me just tell you something. That it was the tax laws. I don't want to pay tax. Before I came here, I was a private developer. I was a private business people. He passed a tax bill that gave us all these privileges for depreciation and for tax credits. We build the building and we get tax credits like the hotel on Pennsylvania Avenue. You get a massive, which by the way, was given to me by the Obama administration, if you can believe that. Now the man got fired right after that happened. But
Vice President Biden, you want to respond?
Yeah, I do want to respond. Look, the tax code that made him, put him in a position that he pays less tax than a school teacher makes, on the money a school teacher makes, is because of him he says he's smart because he can take advantage of the tax code. And he does take advantage of the tax code. That's why I'm going to eliminate the Trump tax cuts. And we're going to eliminate those tax cuts. And make sure that we invest in the people who, in fact, need the help. People out there need help.
But why didn't you do it over the last 25 years?
Because you weren't president. Because you weren't president screwing things up.
You were a senator.
You're the worst president America has ever had.
Hey,
Come
Joe,
on.
let me just tell you, Joe. I've done more in 47 months. I've done more than you've done in 47 years, Joe.
Woo!
We've done things that you never even thought of doing, including fixing the broken military that you gave me, including taking care of your vets.
Mr. President, we're talking about the economy. I'd like to ask you about your plans going forward.
Who's this little bitch?
Mr. Vice President, your economic plan.
The Democratic moderator. They know who he is.
Focuses a lot on big government, big taxes, big spending. I want
Look at him. He looks like a straight libtard.
You propose more than $4 trillion over a decade in new taxes on individuals making more than $400,000 a year and on corporations. President Trump says that that kind of an increase in taxes is going to hurt the economy as it's just coming out of a recession.
Well, just take a look at what
the
analysis done by Wall Street firms points out that my economic plan would create 7 million more jobs than his in 4 years, number one. And number two, it would create an additional $1 trillion in economic growth because it would be about buying American. That we're going to make, this federal government spends $600 billion a year on everything from ships to steel to buildings and the like. And under my proposal, we're going to make sure that every penny of that has to be made by a company.
But respectfully,
you see that
I'm
earpiece?
talking about taxes, not spending.
By the way, I'm going to eliminate
it's a skin
significant
color.
number of the tax. I'm going to make
it's up here.
The corporate
inside
tax
his ear canal, but a little higher.
21%. You have 91 companies, in the Fortune 500 who don't pay a single penny in tax, making billions of dollars.
Sleepy Joe stuttering like always.
Because you, in fact, passed that. That was your tax proposal.
I got it done, and you know what happened?
Yeah, you got it done.
Our economy boomed like it's never boomed.
The economy is busted.
Mr. President, let me pick up on that. You would continue your free market approach, lower taxes, more deregulation, correct?
Not lower taxes for American people.
But in Obama's, you're talking about the economy booming. It turns out that in Obama's final 3 years as president, more jobs were created, 1.5 million more jobs in the first 3 years of your presidency.
You know who I think should have been the moderator? Candace
since
Owens.
economic recovery.
I think
since
Candace Owens should have been the
1929.
moderator.
It was the slowest recovery. Also, they took over something that was down here. All you had to do is turn on the lights and you pick up a lot. But they had the slowest economic recovery since 1929. Let me tell you about the stock market. When the stock market goes up, that means jobs. It also means 401ks. If you got in, if you ever became president with your ideas, you want to terminate my taxes, I'll tell you what, you'll lose half of the companies that have poured in here will leave, and plenty of companies that are already here, they'll leave for other places. They will leave, and you will have a depression, the likes of which you've never seen.
Look, we inherited the worst recession short of a depression in American history. I was asked to bring it back. We were able to have an economic recovery that created the jobs you're talking about. We handed him a booming economy. He blew it.
It wasn't booming.
He blew it.
It wasn't booming. It was the weakest recovery since 1929.
Is it fair to say he blew it when, in fact, when there was record low unemployment before COVID?
Yeah, but because
so how did he blow it?
Even before COVID, manufacturing went in the hole. Manufacturing went in the hole.
Sleepy Joe doesn't know what the fuck he's talking about at all.
They said it would take, no, you're
He has no clue what Trump said. What did he say?
They said it would take a miracle to bring back manufacturing. I brought back 700,000 jobs. They brought back nothing. They gave up on manufacturing.
I was asked to bring back Chrysler and General Motors. We brought them back right here in the state of Ohio and Michigan. He blew it. They're gone. He blew it. And in fact, they're going.
Ohio had the best year it's ever had.
Why is he trying to take credit for what Trump did?
The best year they've ever had.
It's not
Many
true.
car companies came in from Germany, from Japan, went to Michigan,
Obama
went
had
to
already
Ohio,
started
and they didn't come in on you.
Mr. Vice President.
While we're at it, why is it, just out of curiosity, the mayor of Moscow's wife gave your son $3.5 million. What did he do to deserve it? What did he do?
That's what we all want to know.
To deserve
What did he do?
$183,000.
Nothing.
Question and an answer.
None of that is true.
Oh, really?
Totally,
Mr. President,
Mr.
President, please.
Totally discredited. Totally discredited. And by the way,
well, wait, he didn't get $3.5 million?
He's blowing the question off.
$3.5 million.
that is not true.
Oh, really?
Mr. President.
Oh, he lied. It's not true.
Please.
It's a fact.
Well, you have raised an issue. Let the Vice President answer.
Discredited.
Did Burris pay him $183,000 a month with no experience in energy?
Mr. President,
my son did nothing wrong at Burisma.
I think he did.
Mr. President, let him answer.
He doesn't want to let me answer because he knows I have the truth. His position has been totally, thoroughly discredited.
By who?
And
the media?
By everybody. Well, by the media, by our allies, by the World Bank, by everyone has discredited. Matter of fact, even the people who testified under oath.
So let me ask you this.
No, go ahead, Mr. I'm listening to you.
You got $3.5 million from Moscow.
He testified under oath in his administration, said, I did my job and I did it very well.
Oh,
I
really?
did it
I'd like to know
honorably.
who they are.
Well, I'll give you the list of the people who testified.
No, go ahead, sir.
Sure, you've already fired most of them because they did a good job. It's hard to get any word in with this clown. Excuse me, this
Hey, let me just tell you.
Oh!
Mr. President,
$3.5 million.
Whoa!
That is simply
Why did he
true.
deserve $3.5 million from Moscow?
Look, here's the deal. We want to talk about families and ethics. I don't want to do that. I mean, his family we could talk about all night. His family's already...
My family lost a fortune.
Right.
And that's such a...
Mr. President,
Every single one of them lost.
This is not about my family or his family. It's about your family. The American people. He doesn't... That's not true. It doesn't want
You
to
chicken
talk
shit.
about
Answer the
what
question.
You need. You, the American people. It's about you. That's what we're talking about.
all right, that's the end of the segment. We're moving on. Gentlemen, I hate to raise my voice, but it seems to me, why should I be different than the two of you? We're going to go to the next segment. In that segment, you each are going to have 2 uninterrupted moments. In those 2 uninterrupted minutes, Mr. President, you can say anything you want. I'm going to ask a question about race,
but stop
if you want to answer
interrupting
about
him.
something else, go ahead. But I think that the country would be better served if we allowed both people to speak with fewer interruptions. I'm appealing to you, sir, to do that.
Well, and him too.
Well, frankly, you've been doing more interrupting
Oh, that's
than
all
me.
right, but he does plenty.
Well, less than you have. President Trump, you have often said that you believe you have done more for black Americans than any president, with the possible exception of Abraham Lincoln. My question for the two of you is, why should voters trust you rather than your opponent to deal with the race issues facing this country over the next 4 years? Vice President Biden, you go first.
It's about equity and equality. It's about decency. It's about the Constitution. And we have never walked away from trying to require equity for everyone, equality for the whole of America. But we've never accomplished it. But we've never walked away from it like he has done. It is true. The reason I got in the race is when those people, close your eyes, remember what those people look like coming out of the fields carrying torches, their veins bulging, just spewing anti-Semitic bile, and accompanied by the Ku Klux Klan. A young woman got killed. And they asked the president what he thought. He said there were very fine people on both sides. No president has ever said anything like that.
Every time this guy opens his mouth, I cringe.
Second point I'd make to you is that when Floyd was killed, when Mr. Floyd was killed, there was a peaceful protest in front of the White House. What did he do? He came out of his bunker,
peaceful?
had
They
the
were threatening
military
him.
to use tear gas on him so he could walk across to a church and hold up a Bible. And then what happened after that? The bishop of that very church said that it was a disgrace. The general who was with him said all he ever wants to do is divide people, not unite people at all. This is a president who has used everything as a dog whistle to try to generate racist hatred, racist division. This is a man who, in fact, you talk about helping African Americans. 1 in 1,000 African Americans has been killed because of the coronavirus. And if he doesn't do something quickly, by the end of the year, 1 in 500 will have been killed. 1 in 500 African Americans. This man is a savior of African Americans. This man cares at all. This man's done virtually nothing. Look, the fact is that you have to look at what he talks about. You have to look at what he did, and what he did has been disastrous for the African American community.
So, President Trump, you have 2 minutes. Why should Americans trust you over your opponent to deal with racism?
You did a crime bill, 1994, where you called them super predators, African Americans, the super predators, and they've never forgotten it. They've never forgotten it, Joe.
No, sir, it's his 2 minutes.
So you did that, and they called you super predator, and I'm letting people out of jail now that you have treated the African American population community, you have treated the black community
I wish you would bring up Joe
anybody in this country.
Quote,
you did the 1990, and that's
if you don't vote
if you
for me, you're not black.
I'm doing better than any Republican has done in a long time because they saw what you did. As far as the church is concerned, and as far as the generals are concerned, we just got the support of 250 military leaders and generals. Total support. Law enforcement, almost every law enforcement group in the United States. I have Florida, I have Texas, I have Ohio, I have Portland. The sheriff just came out today and he said, I support President Trump. I don't think you have any law enforcement. You can't even say the word law enforcement because if you say those words, you're going to lose all of your radical left supporters. And why aren't you saying those words, Joe? Why don't you say the words law enforcement? Because you know what? If they called us in Portland, we would put out that fire in a half an hour, but they won't do it because they're run by radical left Democrats. If you look at Chicago, if you look at any place you want to look, Seattle, they heard we were coming in the following day and they put up their hands and we got back Seattle. Minneapolis, we got it back, Joe, because we believe in law and order, but you don't. The top 10 cities and just about the top 40 cities are run by Democrats and in many cases radical left. And I'll tell you what, the people of this country want and demand law and order, and you're afraid to even say it.
All right. I want to return to the question of race, that there is a separate but unequal system of justice for blacks in this country.
Yes, there's systemic justice in this country, in education and work and in law enforcement.
He can't even pronounce words.
But look, the vast majority of police officers are good, decent, honorable men and women. They risk their lives every day to take care of us. But there are some bad apples, and when they occur, they have to be sorted out. They have to be held accountable. They have to be held accountable. And what I'm going to do as President of the United States is call together an entire group of people at the White House, everything from the civil rights groups to the police officers, to the police chiefs, and we're going to work this out. we're going to work this out. So we changed the way in which we have more transparency in when these things happen. These cops aren't happy to see what happened to George Floyd. These cops aren't happy to see what happened to Breonna Taylor.
He said cops instead of cops.
But we have to have a system where
Sleepy
people are held
Joe.
accountable. And by the way, violence in response is never appropriate. Never appropriate. Peaceful protest is. Violence is never appropriate.
Right,
but your people are doing it.
When they run through the middle of the town and burn down your stores and kill people all over the place,
that
and you
is
say
not
peaceful
peaceful.
protest. No, it's not, but you say it is.
President Trump, I'd like to continue with the issue of race, and I promise we're going to
Let
get
him
to the issue
talk.
of law and order in a moment. This
Let
month,
Donald Trump
your
talk.
administration directed federal agencies to end racial sensitivity training that addresses white privilege or critical race theory. Why did you decide to do that, to end racial sensitivity training, and do you believe that there is systemic racism in this country, sir?
I ended it because it's racist. I ended it because a lot of people were complaining that they were asked to do things that were absolutely insane, that it was a radical revolution that was taking place in our military, in our schools, all over the place, and you know it, and so does everybody else, and he would know.
What is radical about racial sensitivity training, sir?
If you were a certain person, you had no status in life. It was sort of a reversal. And if you look at the people, we were paying people hundreds of thousands of dollars to teach very bad ideas, and frankly, very sick ideas. And really, they were teaching people to hate our country. And I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to allow that to happen.
Good.
We have to go back to the core values of this country. They were teaching people that our country is a horrible place, it's a racist place, and they were teaching people to hate our country. And I'm not going to allow that to happen.
Vice President Biden?
Nobody's doing that. He's racist.
You just don't know.
Here's the deal. I know a lot more about this.
Let him finish.
The fact is that there is racial insensitivity. People have to be made aware of what other people feel like, what insults them, what is demeaning to them. It's important to people know. They don't want to. Many people don't want to hurt other people's feelings. This guy and his friends look down on so many people. They look down their nose on people like Irish Catholics like me and grew up in Scranton. They look down on people who don't have money. They look down on people who are of a different faith. They look down on people who are a different color. In fact, we're all Americans. The only way we're going to bring this country together is bring everybody together.
But yet he made a racial comment about black
people.
people.
If we do it together, we can take this on.
Biden is the most racist motherfucker on this planet.
I mean, President Trump, sir.
During the Obama-Biden administration, there was tremendous division. There was hatred. You look at Ferguson, you go to many places. Look at Oakland. Look what happened in Oakland. Look what happened in Baltimore. Look what happened. Frankly, it was more violent than what I'm even seeing now.
Oh,
but the reason is that
ridiculous.
the Democrats that run these cities don't want to talk like you about law and order.
How come he's not saying nothing about Biden when he interrupts?
Are you in favor of law and
No,
order?
Biden
I'm in
keeps interrupting,
favor
doesn't
of
say
law.
shit.
I know.
Are you in favor of law and order? Go
Yes, I'm in favor.
You asked a question, let him finish.
Law and order.
This is
Law and order.
Let him.
Law and
Because
order
he's a
with
hypocrite.
justice, where people get treated fairly. And the fact of the matter is, violent crime went down 17%, 15% in our administration.
I do want to talk about this issue of law and order, though. And in the joint recommendation that came from the Biden-Bernie Sanders task force, you talked about, quote, reimagining policing. First of all, what does reimagining policing mean, and do you support?
It means,
Let me, if I might finish the question. What does reimagining policing mean, and do you support the Black Lives Matter call for
Whoa!
community control of policing?
Let's see what he says.
what I support is the police having the opportunity to deal with the problems they face. And I'm totally opposed to defunding the police officers. As a matter of fact, police, local police, the only one defunding it, his budget calls for a $400 million cut in local law enforcement assistance. They need more assistance. They need, when they show up for a 9/11 call, to have someone with them as a psychologist or psychiatrist to keep them from having to use force and be able to talk people down. We have to have community policing like we had before, where the officers get to know the people in the communities. That's when crime went down. It didn't go up, it went down. And so we have to be engaged.
That's not what they're talking
That's
about,
who?
Chris. That's not what
that's
he's talking about defunding the police.
That is not true.
He doesn't have any law support. He has no law enforcement
That's not
support.
true.
Almost
That's
nothing.
Look.
Oh, right. Who do you have? Name one group that supports you. Name one group that came out and supported you. Go ahead. Think.
We're waiting.
We don't have time to do
No,
anything.
all right.
Motherfucker doesn't want to answer any of the questions.
They came
I
out
think,
and
I think,
supported
gentlemen, I think I'm going to take back
I don't think there are any.
and I want to get to another subject, which is the issue of protests in many cities that have turned violent. In Portland, Oregon, especially, we had more than 100 straight days of protests, which I think you would agree. You talk about peaceful protests. Many of those turned into riots. Mr. Vice President, you say that people who commit crimes should be held accountable. The question I have, though, is, as the Democratic nominee, and earlier tonight you said that you are the Democratic Party right now, have you ever called the Democratic mayor of Portland or the Democratic governor of Oregon and said,
Good question.
hey, you got to stop this, bring in the National Guard, do whatever it takes, but you stop the days and months of violence?
Not once.
I don't hold public office now. I am a former vice president. I've made it clear in my public statements that the violence should be prosecuted. It should be prosecuted, and anyone who commits it
But
should
you've
be
never
prosecuted.
called for the people.
But he didn't do shit about it.
Sir. You have never called for the leaders in Portland and in Oregon to bring in the National Guard and knock off 100 days of riots.
They can, in fact, take care of it if he just stay out of the way. Look here.
Oh, really?
Here.
Oh, really?
Here's the thing.
I sent in the U.S. Marshals to
question.
get the killer of a young man in the middle of the street. They shot him.
You know, his own former spokesperson said, you know, riots and chaos and violence help his cause. That's what this is all about.
I don't know who said that.
I do.
No one said that.
Who?
No one said that.
Kellyanne Conway.
I don't think she said that.
He said that. And so here's the, well, here's the point. The point is that that's what he is, keeps trying to rile everything up. He doesn't want to calm things down. Instead of going in and talking to people and saying, let's get everybody together, figure out how to deal with this. What's he do? He just pours gasoline in the fire constantly, and every single solitary time.
And to end this, button up this segment, I'm going to give you a minute to answer, sir.
You
have repeatedly criticized.
I have to answer his statement.
No, you have repeatedly. You've been talking back and forth.
Statement.
I'm asking you.
I would love to end it.
Sir.
I would love to end it.
You know, if you want to switch seats.
We could very quickly.
We can do that, but
send in the National Guard, it would be over. There'd be no problem.
Okay.
But they don't want to accept the National Guard.
You have repeatedly criticized the vice president for not specifically calling out Antifa and other left-wing extremist groups. But are you willing tonight to condemn white supremacists and militia groups and to say
he has done it already.
Need to stand down and not add to the violence in a number of these cities, as we saw in Kenosha and as we've seen in Portland?
Sure,
are you prepared to specifically
do it?
I
would say almost everything I see is from the left wing, not from the right wing.
So what are you saying?
I'm willing to do anything. I want to see peace.
Then do it, sir.
Say it. Do it. Say it.
You want to call him? What do you want to call him? Give me a name. Give me a
white
name.
Supremacists and right supremacists and right
Proud
militia.
Boys, stand back and stand by. But I'll tell you what. Somebody's got to do something about Antifa and the left, because this is not a right-wing problem. This is a left-wing. This is a left-wing problem.
White supremacists. Antifa's an idea, not an organization.
Oh, you got it.
Not militia. That's what
Antifa is an idea, not an organization. What the fuck is that?
Well, then you know what?
No, we're done, sir. We're moving on to the next. We're moving.
That's not an idea.
Everybody in your administration tells you the truth has a bad idea.
Can I tell you what?
You have no idea.
Antifa is a dangerous
radical gentlemen, we're now moving on to the Trump and Biden record.
He's saying it.
When a president, I'm going to ask a question. When the president seeks a second term, it is generally a referendum on his record. But Vice President Biden, you like to quote one of your dad's sayings, which is, don't compare me to the almighty, compare me to the alternative. Why should voters elect you president over your opponent? In this segment, President Trump, you go first, 2 minutes.
Because there has never been an administration or president who has done more than I've done in a period of 3.5 years. And that's despite the impeachment hoax. And you saw what happened today with Hillary Clinton, where it was a whole big con job. But despite going through all of these things, where I had to fight both flanks and behind me and above. There has never been an administration that's done what I've done. The greatest, before COVID came in, the greatest economy in history, lowest unemployment numbers. Everything was good. Everything was going. And by the way, there was unity going to happen.
That's true.
People were calling me for the first time in years. They were calling and they were saying, it's time maybe. And then what happened? We got hit, but now we're building it back up again. A rebuilding of the military, including Space Force and all of the other things. A fixing of the VA, which was a mess under him. 308,000 people died because they didn't have proper health care. He was a mess. And we now got a 91% approval rating at the VA, our vets. We take care of our vets. But we've rebuilt our military. The job that we've done, and I'll tell you some people say maybe the most important. By the end of the first term, I'll have approximately 300 federal judges and Court of Appeals judges, 300, and hopefully 3 great Supreme Court justices. That is a record, the likes of which very few people, and you know one of the reasons I'll have so many judges? Because President Obama and him left me 128 judges to fill. When you leave office, you don't leave any judges. That's like, you just don't do that. They left 128 openings, and if I were a member of his party, because they have a little different philosophy, I'd say if you left us 128 openings, you can't be a good president, you can't be a good vice president. But I want to thank you because it gives us almost, it'll probably be above that number by the end of this term. 300 judges, it's a record.
Looking at both your records, why should voters elect you president as opposed to President Trump? You have
I love this question.
uninterrupted.
Hold on.
Under this president, we become weaker, sicker, poorer, more divided, and more violent. When I was vice president, we inherited a recession. I was asked to fix it. I did. We left in a booming economy.
Booming.
Caused the recession.
Booming.
With regard to being weaker, the fact is that I've gone head to head with Putin and made it clear to him we're not going to take any of his stuff. He's Putin's puppy. He still refuses to even say anything to Putin about the bounty on the heads of American soldiers.
Your son got $3 million.
And by the way, my son...
Wait a minute. Mr. President, your campaign agreed that both sides would get 2-minute answers uninterrupted. Well, your side agreed to it, and why don't you observe what your campaign agreed to as a ground rule, okay, sir?
He never keeps his word.
No, I'm not asking. That was a rhetorical question.
Can you
Go
add
ahead,
back
sir.
30 seconds?
Yeah, yes, you may have.
All right.
Go ahead.
So, thirdly, we're poor. The
Biden's a
billionaires have
crybaby.
got much more wealthy by a tune of over $300 to $400 billion more just since COVID. You in the home, you got less. You're in more trouble than you were before. In terms of being more violent, when we were in office, there were 15% less violence in America than there is today. He's President of the United States. It's on his watch. And with regard to more divided, the nation can't stay divided. We can't be this way. And speaking of my son, the way you talk about the military, the way you talk about them being losers and being...
He never said that.
My son... was in Iraq. He spent a year there. He got the Bronze Star. He got the Conspicuous Service Medal. He was not a loser. He was a patriot, and the people left behind there were heroes.
Really?
And I resent
Biden.
I'm talking about my son, Beau Biden. You're talking about
I don't know Beau. I know Hunter.
Yeah,
Hunter got thrown out of the military. He was thrown out, dishonorably discharged.
That's not true. It wasn't dishonorably.
Cocaine use. And he didn't have a job until you became vice president. And once you
None
became
of that
vice
is
president,
true.
he made a fortune in Ukraine, in China, in Moscow,
That is simply
and various
not
other places.
true.
He
My
made a
son,
fortune.
My son,
And he didn't have a job.
like a lot of people we know at home, had a drug problem. He's overtaken it. He's fixed it. He's worked on it, and I'm proud of him.
But why was he
I'm proud of
given
my
tens
son.
of millions
All right,
of
But he
dollars?
wasn't given
All right.
tens of millions of
He was
dollars.
given
That is
tens of
totally,
millions of
that's
dollars.
totally,
President Trump, we've already been
totally discredited.
We've already been through this. I think the American people would rather hear about more substantial
So do I.
subjects. Well, you know, as the moderator, sir, I'm going to make a judgment call here.
Gets $3.5 million from the
Let's
mayor
talk
of
about-
Moscow.
let's talk about
Not
think
true.
it's a terrible
That
thing.
report is totally
Why did he do
discredited.
it?
Mitt Romney on that committee says it wasn't worth taxpayers' money, that report. It was written for political reasons.
You know, I'd like to talk about climate change.
So would I.
Okay. The forest fires in the West are raging now. They have burned millions of acres. They have displaced hundreds of thousands of people. When state officials there blame the fires on climate change, Mr. President, you said, I don't think the science knows. Over your 4 years, you have pulled the U.S. out of the Paris Climate Accord. You have rolled back a number of Obama environmental records. What do you believe about the science of climate change, and what will you do in the next 4 years to confront it?
I want crystal clean water and air. I want beautiful clean air. We have now the lowest carbon. If you look at our numbers right now, because our businesses are doing well. As far as the fires are concerned, you need forest management in addition to everything else. The forest floors are loaded up with trees, dead trees that are years old, and they're like tinder, and leaves and everything else. You drop a cigarette in there, the whole forest burns down. You've got to have forest management.
What do you believe about the science of climate change, sir?
I believe that we have to do everything we can to have immaculate air, immaculate water, and do whatever else we can that's good. You know, we're planting 1 billion trees, the Billion Tree Project, and it's very exciting.
You believe that human pollution, greenhouse gas emissions contributes to the global warming of the planet?
I think a lot of things do, but I think to an extent, yes. But I also think we have to do better management of our forests. Every year, I get the call, California's burning. California's burning. If that was cleaned, if you had forest management, good forest management, you wouldn't be getting those calls. You know, in Europe, they live their forest cities. They're called forest cities. They maintain their forests. They manage their forests. I was with the head of a major country. It's a forest city. He said, sir, we have trees that are far more, they ignite much easier than California. There shouldn't be that problem. I spoke with the governor about it. I'm getting along very well with the governor. But I said, you know, at some point, you can't every year have hundreds of thousands of acres of land just burned to the ground. That's burning down because of a lack of management.
But, sir, if you believe in the science of climate change, why have you rolled back the Obama Clean Power Plan, which limited carbon emissions in power plants? Why have you relaxed?
Because it was driving energy prices through the sky. What's happening is the car is much less expensive and it's a much safer car, and you're talking about a tiny difference. And then what would happen, because of the cost of the car, you would have at least double and triple the number of cars purchased. We have the old slugs out there that are 10, 12 years old. If you did that, the car would be safer. It would be much cheaper by $3,500.
In the case of California, they simply
but you would take a lot of cars off the market because people would be able to afford a car. Now, and by the way, we're going to see how that turns out. But a lot of people agree with me. Many people. The car has gotten so expensive because they have computers all over the place for an extra little bit of gasoline. And I'm okay with electric cars too. I think I'm all for electric cars. I've given big incentives for electric cars. But what they've done in California is just crazy. He made a statement about the military. He said I said something about the military. He and his friends made it up, and then they went with it. I never said it.
Okay.
That is
what he
true.
did is he said,
this segment.
he called the military
stupid
bastards.
I did not say
that. He said, stupid bastards. He said it.
Stop.
I would never say that.
Pardon me?
You support that?
No, I don't support the Green New Deal.
You don't? Oh, well, that's a big statement.
I
That
support
means you just lost the radical left.
Oh, truth comes out. Biden.
The Biden plan, which is different than what he calls the radical Green New Deal.
All right, gentlemen, final segment. What are you prepared to do to reassure the American people that the next president will be the legitimate winner of this election? In this final segment, Mr. Vice President, you go first.
Prepared to let people vote. They should go to iwillvote.com. Decide how they're going to vote, when they're going to vote, and what means by which they're going to vote. His own Homeland Security Director, and as well as the FBI Director, says there is no evidence at all that mail-in ballots are a source of being manipulated.
Oh, no evidence at all?
They said that.
What was that video you showed me just
The fact is that there are going to be millions of people because of COVID that are going to be...
Lying bastard! There was a video out today for the mail-in ballot fucking fraud shit.
What about all those military ballots they just found?
Make sure that those people who want to vote in person are able to vote because enough poll watchers are there to make sure they can socially distance. The polls are open on time, and the polls stay open until the votes are counted. And this is all about trying to dissuade people from voting because he's trying to scare people into thinking that's not going to be legitimate. Show up and vote. You will determine the outcome of this election.
Damn right,
vote,
not you.
Vote, vote. If you're able to vote early in your state, vote early. If you're able to vote in person, vote in person. Vote whatever way is the best way for you, because you will.
Bullshit. Then why are you pushing the mail-in ballot shit?
The outcome of this election.
What about all the military votes that were found in the trash can?
They're all counted. That will be accepted. If I win, that will be accepted. If I lose, that will be accepted. But by the way, if in fact he says he's not sure what he's going to accept, well, let me tell you something. It doesn't matter, because if we get the votes, it's going to be all over. He's going to go. He can't stay in power. It won't happen. It won't happen. So vote. Just make sure.
Is he dreaming?
You have it in your control to determine what this country's going to look like the next 4 years.
What?
Is it going to change and get 4 more years?
Even the internet doesn't agree with him. He's like, shut up.
President, 2 minutes.
So when I listened to Joe talking about a transition, there's been no transition from when I won. I won that election. Crooked Hillary Clinton, if you look at all of the different people, there was no transition because they came after me trying to do a coup. They came after me spying on my campaign. They started from the day I won and even before I won. From the day I came down the escalator with our First Lady, they were a disaster. They were a disgrace to our country. And we've caught them. We've caught them all. We've got it all on tape. We've caught them all. And by the way, you gave the idea for the Logan Act against General Flynn. You better take a look at that, because we caught you in a sense. And President Obama was sitting in the office. He knew about it too. So don't tell me about a free transition. As far as the ballots are concerned, it's a disaster. A solicited ballot, okay, solicited is okay. You're soliciting, you're asking, they send it back, you send it back. I did that. If you have an unsolicited, they're sending millions of ballots all over the country. There's fraud. They found them in creeks. They found some with the name Trump, just happened to have the name Trump just the other day in a waste paper basket. They're being sent all over the place. They sent 2 in a Democrat area. They sent out 1,000 ballots. Everybody got 2 ballots. This is going to be a fraud like you've never seen. The other thing, it's nice on November 3rd, you're watching and you see who won the election. And I think we're going to do well because people are really happy with the job we've done. But you know what? We won't know. We might not know for months because these ballots are going to be all over. Take a look at what happened in Manhattan. Take a look at what happened in New Jersey. Take a look at what happened in Virginia and other places. They're not losing 2%, 1%, which, by the way, is too much. An election could be won or lost with that. They're losing 30 and 40%. It's a fraud, and it's a shame. And can you imagine where they say you have to have your ballot in by November 10th? November 10th. That means that's 7 days after the election, in theory, should have been announced.
Okay.
We have major states with that.
Sir,
all run by Democrats.
2 minutes is 2 minutes.
All run by Democrats. It's
President Trump,
it's a rigged election.
you're going to be able to continue. You have been charging for months that mail-in balloting is going to be a disaster. You say it's rigged, that it's going to lead to fraud. But in 2018, in the last midterm election, 31 million people voted mail-in voting. That was a quarter, more than a quarter of all the voters that year cast their ballots by mail. Now that millions of mail-in ballots have gone out, what are you going to do about it? And are you counting on the Supreme Court, including a Justice Barrett, to settle any dispute?
Yeah, I think I'm counting on them to look at the ballots, definitely. I don't think, I hope we don't need them in terms of the election itself. But for the ballots, I think so. Because what's happening is incredible. I read today, where at least 1% of the ballots for 2016 were invalidated. They take them, we don't like them, we don't like them.
But what are you going to do about it if there are millions of ballots going out right now?
What you do is you go and vote. You do a solicited ballot, and that's okay, or you go and vote.
I'm asking you about the fact that millions of people...
You go and vote. You go and vote.
Like they used to.
Yeah, you go and vote in person like a normal citizen would do.
A solicited ballot where you're sending it in, they're sending it back, and you're sending... They have mailmen with lots of it. Did you see what's going on? Take a look at West Virginia, mailmen selling the ballots. They're being sold. They're being dumped in rivers. This is a horrible thing for our country. This is not going to end well.
In 8 states, election workers are prohibited, currently by law, 8 states, from even beginning to process ballots, even take them out of the envelopes and flatten them until Election Day. That means that it's likely, because there's going to be a huge increase in mail-in balloting, that we are not going to know on election night who the winner is, that it could be days, it could be weeks,
could be months,
until we find out who the new president is. So first for you, sir, finally for the vice president, I hope neither of you will interrupt the other. Will you urge your supporters to stay calm during this extended period, not to engage in any civil unrest, and will you pledge tonight that you will not declare victory until the election has been independently certified? President Trump,
kind of question
I'm
is that?
urging my supporters to go into the polls and watch very carefully, because that's what has to happen. I am urging them to do it. As you know, today there was a big problem. In Philadelphia, they went in to watch. They're called poll watchers, a very safe, very nice thing. They were thrown out. They weren't allowed to watch. You know why? Because bad things happen in Philadelphia, bad things. And I am urging my people. I hope it's going to be a fair election. If it's a fair election, I am 100% on board. But if I see tens of thousands of ballots being manipulated, I can't go along with that. And I'll tell you what, from a common sense,
does that mean
I'll tell you what it means. It means you have a fraudulent election. You're sending out 80 million ballots. They're not equipped to. These people aren't equipped to handle it. Number one. Number two, they cheat. They cheat. Hey, they found ballots in a waste paper basket 3 days ago, and they all had the name military ballots. They were military. They all had the name Trump on them.
Vice President
You think
Biden,
that's good?